Section 8 of the Daredevil of the Army. Experiences as a buzzer and dispatch rider, by Austin Patrick Corcoran. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 4, in which the wireless comes into its own on the British front. Part 2. And now we are nearing our second Christmas, a season that may be merry or very miserable. Holidays, bringing their reminder of a lapse in old associations, are apt to be depressing on the line. Last year we celebrated with a 24-hour truce. This year there is to be no such official recognition of the meaning of the great festival. Truces are inclined to be trying on the morale, particularly when accompanied by fraternisation between the opposing forces. On the other hand, we must do something to mark the day, and the onus of the occasion lies, of course, on the officers. It has already become a custom for them to assume the duty of enlivening and otherwise cheering the men. Life here being in the raw, divested of all semblance of luxury, the efforts of the officers are particularly directed to the procuring of creature comforts. For weeks before, the campaign is on. It takes the form of correspondence. Relatives and friends once forgotten recur pleasantly to mind, particularly those possessed of generous souls. Casual little postscripts convey delicate little hints. Details are forwarded on request, and after that the deluge. Canned, tinned, bottled, boxed, all the forms and varieties of food and drink that can be safely entrusted to the sea come pouring over to the Brigade. My billet is picked out as storehouse, for the simple reason that I live there by myself, and seem to have more room than the rest. I say seem advisedly. As a matter of fact, it is very small, and besides me and my batman, it houses the old owner and his wife. However, we are willing to bark our shins against the boxes, and risk breaking our necks by tripping over hampers down the stairs. What's a leg, more or less, in such a cause? Fritz, however, is not disposed to be so friendly. Which leads me to perhaps the saddest of all the sad incidents I witnessed during my time at the front. The old couple with whom I lived, they were both over 70, had already suffered more than their due share in the war, but with a persistence peculiar to the French peasant, they refused to move farther behind the line. They preferred to stay with their old home, damaged as it was, and their stock which had been reduced to 1 cow and a pig. Before the outbreak they had been happy, and looked forward to an old age, provided for by 3 sturdy sons. These had gone and had died, but the old couple did not complain. They just looked stricken. They were sad, but very quiet, and they tended very faithfully to all my wants. One morning I went off to a neighbouring town, where I stayed until late afternoon. When I returned, it was to find the old lady sitting in the ruins of her home, groaning and rocking herself to and fro. Some neighbours were with her, but she paid no attention to their sympathy. Seeing me, however, she sprang to her feet, and before I could stop her, she had thrown herself on the ground at my feet. "For God's sake, go and kill them! Kill the cursed Boches!" Her voice rose to a shrill scream, and she wound her arms around my ankles. " Look at what they've done to me. Oh, won't you go and kill them?" She was quite beside herself with grief. We did our best to calm her, and by she quieted down. Then she told me what had happened. She had gone out to do her marketing, leaving the old man in charge. When she came back it was to find him killed, her stock blown to atoms, and her house apparently split in two. A couple of shells had pitched close to it. So here she was at 70, without kin, cattle, or money. Her home, however, proved not to be absolutely beyond repair, judged by the standards that hold along the front. Tarpaulin and ground sheets manipulated by the Tommies made it weatherproof, and we continued to live in it. Our store of food, fortunately enough, was not much damaged. But this was not the only accident that threatened our Christmas preparations. Another, not quite so serious, eventuated a little later. According to custom, also, the officers had raked together some few pounds to be spent on the spot. Our brigade being averse to unnecessary labour, the disposing of the money was put in the hands of the sergeant, who in turn left the decision to the men. Their taste ran to pork, so a pig was procured, one of those long-legged, lean, but sleek and satisfying animals that are so much favoured in France. For weeks before Christmas this precious brute came in for more attention than he had ever received in his life. It is surprising that he did not die of overfeeding. Probably his activity saved him, for he was extremely active, as we had reason to regret later. Then 2 days before the holiday rose all the important question. Who was going to kill old Aristoff? You see, we had even christened him, so much did we care for him. As a rule there are few trades unrepresented in a platoon, but ours did not boast of a pig sticker. It was a terrible moment when the men made this discovery. Yet none seemed willing to undertake the necessary task. Killing Boches was one thing, but killing pigs was quite another. Everyone seemed to shrink from the encounter. And then, Heaven can be kind, someone suggested finding a friend, a Connaught man now connected with the Army Service Corps, who had once practised the unpleasant trade in the west of Ireland. But would he come? They put it up to him. He agreed on one condition, that he be allowed to share the excellent Christmas dinner. No one had thought of arranging festivities for the non-combatants of the Army Service Corps. Needless to say, the bargain was struck on the spot and arrangements made for the ceremony of execution. Perhaps you have seen pigs killed, and know all the terrible details. I hadn't, neither had the other officers. So we all gathered round, while the sturdy man from Mayo tied 3 of the animal's legs, drew the rope through a ring which, fixed in the wall close to the ground, was intended to keep him steady. Then, stretched on his back, with the other leg kicking freely, this so that he might pump out his own precious lifeblood, he was ready for the thrust of the knife. Perhaps our presence had made the hangman's hand unsteady, or perhaps he wasn't really a pig sticker, and had only pretended to be one for the sake of the meal. Anyway, he had just inserted the deadly weapon in the animal's throat, when up flew the three-tied legs. Neatly, so neatly that even a boxer could not do it better, he sent a punch home on the executioner's jaw. Down went the Mayo man, sprawling on the earth, and off ran the victim, his blood streaming behind him. Straight through the village street he sped, pursued by the whole brigade, privates, non-coms, subalterns, and colonels. And then, crowning coup on his part, he headed straight for the enemy's line. Were we to resign him to Fritz, or would we risk our heads for the sake of the dinner? Fortunately we were saved such an alternative. That indecisive knife thrust was doing its deadly work. The track of red which we were following told that. Presently, after covering some 800 or 900 yards, he fell, limp from loss of blood. And so the men had pork as the pièce de résistance. But the Connaught man came in for some sarcasm all the same. But though Christmas preparations might amuse us in our leisure, they were not allowed to divert us from our labour. Experiments were still going forward, but mine were now being conducted under the earth. To procure the necessary isolation and tranquillity, a sort of subterranean workshop had been dug. It consisted of a gallery 10 feet long by 6 high, situated about 18 feet beneath the surface. You entered this through a sap, that is, a tunnel, 4 feet in diameter, through which you crawled on hands and knees. This sap ran at right angles to the bottom of a communication trench connecting two support trenches, probably the loneliest position that could be procured along the line. Even at the busiest times, these communication trenches are quiet places, disturbed only by a passing foot. No place, however, could be too quiet for us. It was for this reason that I decided to work on Christmas Eve. Then every man not absolutely essential to the manning of the front line would be released for the purpose of amusing himself. Then, too, the Boche, so surprisingly innocuous even in his most dangerous moments, might be counted on to devote himself to his carols. So I notified my assistants, a corporal named Blackmore and a private named Weston, to meet me at midnight on December the 24th at the mouth of our solitary sap. It was a damp cold night, but nobody was minding the weather. By 9 the festivities were in full swing. The mess halls were merry with the clink of glasses. From the huts resounded the roar of lusty throats. I peeped in at one company concert, and found the stage occupied by perhaps the most disreputable figure I have ever beheld at the front. His boots were muddy, his puttees drooped disconsolately, and his tunic looked as if it had been dragged through a bramble bush. But the music that he wrung from the company piano would make even Kitchener himself overlook greater faults than these. Before I left, his place was taken by a perky little Cockney, who rendered "Just a little love, a little kiss," in a voice calculated to draw tears from a turnip. He had just prepared himself, as shown by the sentimental break in his voice, to give adequate expression to the words "I love you," when from the back of the hall, sung to the air of the song, came a ribald roar, "Gol blimey!" I departed, followed by the shouts of laughter from which even the officers in attendance could not refrain. I never learned how the Cockney took the interruption. Then, having imbibed a tonic suitable to the state of the weather, I went off to join my men. It was exactly midnight as we bent to enter our sap. Blackmore and I went in first. "Not a soul in sight," he said as we descended. "Thank God there won't be anyone to disturb us." And he was right. We were to recall his remark later. We too had just connected up our instruments when Weston, coming in from the mouth of the tunnel, reported the Boches as becoming unusually busy. Barely were the words out of his mouth when the ground quivered all round us. There came a shower of mud and dirt from the top of the gallery. We heard an explosion, a loud rumble, followed immediately by a deep thud and a backdraft of air that blew out our solitary candle. "What the devil?" began Blackmore. We lit up again, went along the gallery into the sap to see what had happened, and found our passage blocked by a solid wall of earth. We looked at one another stupidly. There was dead silence for a few moments. It was Weston who finally spoke first. "Let's dig the stuff away," he said, "before we begin work." I noticed there was a quiver in his voice. Without comment, however, we all set to dig. I looked at my watch. The time was 12:17. Our only tools were two jackknives and my revolver. Dig, dig, dig. We went at it nervously, earnestly, absolutely in silence. After a while I looked at my watch again, expecting to see that an hour had passed. It was exactly 12:22. Half involuntarily I stopped work, and the others follow my example. We all sit down on the earth. So far we have avoided even meeting each other's eyes. Now we look at one another cautiously, probingly, trying not to betray our own knowledge of the position we are placed in. Quite obviously there are 35 feet of solid earth to be shovelled away before we can get out into that support trench. Quite probably that, too, is blocked by crumbled clay. The shell may have blown the parapets down on both sides. There is not the slightest chance that a man will pass anywhere near us to night. Possibly none will pass even to morrow. "Let's shout," says Weston. A perfectly futile suggestion, but we welcome it. It means something to do. Simultaneously and individually we scream at the tops of our voices. But all the answer we get is the echo. The louder our shouts, the greater the reverberation in our ears. But we keep it up until our throats are dry and hoarse. "I'll try my revolver," I say to break the silence. I fire one shot, and the sound reflected from the walls of the gallery almost splits the drums of our ears. But even that seems better than a flat acknowledgment of failure. One after another I shoot all 6 rounds. Our ears are aching and our heads buzzing from the noise. When I have finished, we sit a while in silence, as if expecting some answer. But none comes, of course. That was a foregone conclusion. Well, there is nothing for it but to dig. Once again we go at it. Tiny handfuls of earth falling at our feet reward our efforts. strenuous efforts that cause the perspiration to pour from our faces. So concentrated is my attention of the particular task in hand that I lose consciousness entirely of my comrades, until suddenly my attention is attracted by a strange noise from behind. I turn. There is Weston squatting on the ground, singing in a silly soft voice to himself. "What the devil is he up to?" I asked Blackmore testily. "Loony," comes the brief reply. "Loony?" I repeat the word stupidly after him. "Yes, potty, you know. Gone off his nut." He makes the announcement calmly, to be taken as a matter of course. Lord, what a pretty pickle we're in! Suppose I should come to that. It makes me shiver. I look at Blackmore, white-faced, steady-eyed, silent. He meets my eye, smiles, shrugs his shoulders. I smile back. Fine chap. It would take a lot to drive him insane. Once again we set about our work. Dig, dig, dig. What a rotten job it is. The bending makes my back ache, and all the blood rush to my head. Perhaps, it occurs to me later, this is accountable for the new noise I seem to hear suddenly all round me. I could swear someone is tapping close by. I tell myself it is quite impossible that the Boches could be mining here. We are too far behind our front line. But still my ears keep echoing to that incessant, insistent thud of a pick boring steadily through soft earth. I look around the tunnel. Could that possibly be the gleam of a Boche helmet way back in the gallery? Automatically my hand reaches for the revolver on my hip. Empty. What an ass I've been! Also, what an ass I'm being! If someone was mining near us, with intent to blow up our sap, surely Blackmore could hear them as well as I. And there he is, digging away for dear life. Dig, 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 to the accompaniment of Western singing. I wish his insanity would take another turn. That inane noise is beginning to get on my nerves. I open my mouth to shout at him, and become suddenly conscious that it is dry. And there is a queer, thick feeling in my tongue. Why, of course, it was to be expected. Our fresh air is giving out. However, there is no chance now to think of it, for Weston has decided to take all our attention. Whether my sudden movement toward him had attracted him, I can't say. Anyway, he rises to his feet, and, shouting wildly, begins heaving at us handfuls of the loose earth. "Here, stow that," orders Blackmore. But the madman does not notice him. Presently, however, he desists of his own accord, and begins instead a mad gallop up and down the gallery, all the time emitting wild whoops. He stops a moment to step deliberately on our delicate instruments, which crumble with a soft crash beneath his heel. We watch him helplessly for a while, and then I decide to use authority. "Stop that racket at once," I order, "and let us get on with our work." His answer is a rush at me. "Damn you!" he screams. "It's all your bloody fault. You brought us here. You're burying us alive." Well, the murder is out at last. Buried alive. A pretty prospect. But there is no time to dwell on it now. With the violence of lunacy, he starts to attack me. We clinch for a second, then there is nothing else for it. I hit him on the head with the butt of my revolver, and he drops unconscious to the ground. Barely has he fallen when the candle goes out, leaving Blackmore and me to our efforts in the dark. We stand there baffled and helpless, wondering what on earth to do next. "For God's sake sing or something," I tell him irritably. He begins to hum some old music hall song everyone knows, but he can't keep the quaver out of his voice. The result is a sort of comical cackle. "Lord, you're worse than the silence." He stops at once, nothing offended. I feel a fool, also ashamed. If I am to lose heart, at least I needn't take it out on him, the staunchest and sanest pal a man could find. We go at it again. Dig, dig, dig. We keep it up for what seems hours, until my back seems broken and my brain on fire. Quite suddenly I grow sick of the whole proceeding. What's the use of pretending any longer? We can't possibly get out by our own efforts. We can't hope to get out by anyone else's. We might just as well give in first as last, save ourselves the aching tedium of this futile digging. "Let's ease off," I suggest to Blackmore, unwilling to confess that I'm giving in. "Right-o," comes his cheery answer. Lord, how that man can show me up! We sit down. It must have been 6 in the morning. We have been at it already 6 hours. Weston, who has recovered consciousness, is sobbing like an ill-used child. I sense, rather than see, that Blackmore's head has gone down on his hands. I wonder vaguely whether he is really lost to hope, as I am, and is merely maintaining his blessed British reserve. At least, thank heaven for his stoicism. It's infectious, an excellent antidote for Weston's hysteria. In silence, save for the sobbing, we sit there, motionless, while my eyes peer painfully through the gloom of this grave. If we could only get some light, the tiniest gleam to relieve the blackness. I realise now why the preachers paint hell as exterior darkness. Slowly my gaze travels along the walls of the gallery. As it nears the mouth of the sap, I can scarcely repress my sudden start. For there I see a rift, tiny as the top of a teacup, dim and grey as the early streaks of a winter dawn. I look fixedly at it a moment. It doesn't move. It is really light? I turn my head. It is still there. I might have known. Just a mirage, the trick of a tired imagination. I say nothing to Blackmore, whose head is still bowed. Why worry him? He would just think that I was seeing things. Still, there it is, the size of a star. If it would only stay fixed, instead of travelling as my eye travels round the gallery. It must be imagination. No light could pierce the walls. It must be 15 minutes later that Blackmore, raising his head, grasps my arm, and shouts at me hoarsely, "Light! Look! Look!" "Where?" I ask sceptically. Let him fix its location. "For Christ's sake, are you blind?" It is his first sign of strain. There it is, at the mouth of the sap. Oh yes, I answer stupidly. Of course, so it is. Then at last the explanation dawns on me. My eye, accustomed to the gloom, had preserved the image of this light on the retina. Everywhere I looked I saw the tiny star, which was no more than a reflection still held by my optical nerve. So might your eye, reader, suddenly struck by the glare of an electric arc, keep its dazzling brilliance even after you had deflected your head. Only you, of course, would know what you were seeing. I was inclined to doubt the evidence of my own senses. Presently we rise and grope along the gallery to investigate this new gleam of hope. Evidently when the earth crumbled in under the impact of the shell, it had failed to fill the sap completely. Just a tiny crack remained open, made perceptible by the light of day. "Well, we won't choke to death anyway," says Blackmore very casually. No, only for this crack we might be already dead. Once again we set to work, but there is new energy in our efforts. We keep it up for hours, never tiring, but ever turning to the little light on which we depend for our life. We try to explain to Weston, but he only whimpers like a whipped child. Poor chap! Why couldn't he have held out? I can see my watch again now. As it points to 10 a.m., the first shadow passes across the crack. "They've come!" shouts Blackmore. We rush to the hole, and holler, but evidently the damp earth retains the sound. Nothing answers us yet but the echo. More shadows. They pass and repass repeatedly. We get impatient. How can any men be so blind? "Good God! Can't they see we're buried?" Blackmore is irritable now. We shout again, but with no better results. Shout and dig and shout. This is our regular routine. With every moment our nerves are getting rawer. And then, it is 11, a sound reaches our ears. Someone digging. Lord, they've opened their eyes at last. Our own work takes on now a furious quality of energy. We dig as we never dug before. Even Weston, sensing hope, has ceased to sob at last, and has crept cautiously closer to the sap. Conversation between us has stopped absolutely, lest by any chance we should miss a welcome sound. 12 o'clock, and we're still here. Suppose we were mistaken after all. Suppose they are not digging toward us. Suppose they are merely clearing the trench, quite forgetting that our sap was somewhere near. But they must miss us. They must. Blackmore is nervous now. "I told the fellows I was coming here last night." We shout again. No answer but the echo. Well, they're still digging, and we are at least sure of that. 12:30. We fancy we hear a voice close by. We stop to listen, but only the sound of the entrenching tool reaches us. 12:40. It's coming closer. Yes, they're coming to us all right. That thud is too near for the trench. We tell Weston, but he only looks stupid and shakes his head. 1 o'clock. A shaft of light shoots into the gallery. A hand comes through, then a head, then a man's whole body. I see someone bearing a lantern. I hear a voice asking a question. I try to answer, but my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. I throw out an arm to catch something. It is taken. The next thing I know, I am lying in the casualty clearing station, with a doctor bending over my head. "Better now?" "Yes, thanks." He tells me the story. No one had missed us all evening. I hadn't said I was going to work. No one had missed us in the morning until the Chief Royal Engineer, coming to breakfast, noticed my vacant place. "Where is he?" he asks, being a friend of mine. "Working in his bally sap, I suppose," said someone. "I must drop round and tell him to hurry over before all the good things are gone." It was a Christmas breakfast, an unusually good spread. It was about 10 when, in pursuance of his thoughtful project, he dropped round to the trench and found his way blocked by a mound of earth. Quite obviously a Boche shell had pitched neatly. Immediately he set the men to work with a will. Were we alive? That was the burning question which added zest to their very earnest efforts. Yet, even with their regular entrenching tools, it took them over 3 hours to reach us. What a chance we had had with our jackknives and revolver! I inquire for Blackmore. Oh, he's all right. Not a nerve seemingly in the man's whole body. Weston? Well, it seems he had been buried once before. The doctor shakes his head over the probable effects of the second shock. No wonder he had gone "potty" right away. They send me back to my billet, where I am put to bed. Near by is a brother officer shaving. I ask him for his mirror to gratify a sudden whim. He gives it to me, and I can scarcely believe what I see. Can this man be I? This man with the haggard features and the hair turned so white on both sides of his head? Well, why not? Don't I feel sufficiently old and withered? I lie back, limp and lifeless, like an old man. For 2 days I stay there. Then my inertia leaves me. My brain begins to cry out for new food for thought. They send me back of the line to give me a chance to recuperate. But my nerves won't leave me alone. They wake me in the night in the grip of horrid nightmares. They shake me as if with ague at the sound of sudden noise. By a desperate effort, I concentrate on such work as I have to do. It relieves me somewhat, and I pluck up heart again. But nature has still a heavy toll to take for the violence done her that Christmas night. End of section 8.